there, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to Sin's Workshop. Hope you all can hear me. Just got a new phone, so this is pretty interesting. So, today we're going to be talking about Outrun the Wind by Elizabeth Tammy. This book has been sitting on my Kindle library for quite some time. It was an ARC that I received a long time ago, and I just never, unfortunately, had the time to read it. But I finally have the time, thanks to this quarantine. Trying to look on the bright side of this COVID-19 pandemic. It has definitely given me a lot of time to spend with my son and a lot of time to catch up on my reading and my writing. Now, what I took away from the novel is, needless to say, I wasn't impressed with it. Let me start with that. I'm a huge fan of Greek mythology. If you follow my podcast, you already know that. I love Greek mythology. I'm especially attuned to anything about Artemis because Artemis is my namesake. Cynthia is derived from Artemis. I learned this from my mom's Greek friends. So when it comes to Artemis and Greek mythology, I tend to be very, very particular. So that's what drew me to this novel. Unfortunately, what I didn't like about the novel was the fact that it came off very cold. I think the story is very interesting. You know, in a lot of Greek mythology, it's usually the men outwitting the women. And, you know, I think this story does give the story of Atalanta and her run a really good feministic approach. She doesn't want to be anyone's wife. She wants to be her own person. You know, I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. What was quite unfortunate was how the story moved forward. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't impressed with it. Like I said, the story comes off incredibly cold. I think the characterization was lacking. I couldn't find myself invested in these characters because they just came off very bland. And I found that incredibly disappointing because, yes, in Greek mythology, the men tend to outwit the women. But the women still have personality, you know. Greek mythology did revere the female gods, and Artemis especially is a fierce person. You know, you hunt in her woods, you kill something prized of her, you know, she'll turn you into a deer and have your own hounds kill you. I mean, that's just something, it's just one piece of Greek mythology. And yeah, I will say this, Artemis in this novel is formidable. I don't like her interaction with Atalanta, though. You know, in classic Greek mythology, Atalanta is one of her huntresses. I wasn't a fan of the relationship and their dichotomy in the beginning of the novel. It was very cold. Atalanta just kind of running away after Meleager is killed was very kind of cowardly, actually. It didn't fit with what I knew of Atalanta, and I don't think it properly captured the strong feministic approach to her. You know, I thought it was very cowardly. I thought Atalanta as a character wasn't really well developed and well formed, and I thought that was very disappointing. I'm okay with retellings, and I can definitely separate my reading from them for the most part. You know, Rick Riordan's Olympian series, I love it. You know, I think he does a great job of readapting some of those classic stories. So, I mean, that's just one example. I just think this novel failed with that because I didn't like how Atalanta just kind of ran away very cowardly. You know, she's offered a chance to join Artemis and her huntresses, and I think the way the story went about constructing the relationship was poorly developed. you know, I will say this, you know, Atlanta does at least go on this journey. Like I said, you know, she does this run because she doesn't want to belong to anyone. She wants to be her own person, and I think that's very admirable as far as her characterization goes. However, you know, that being said, she doesn't really have a lot of personality to her. She's very bland. I feel like all the characters are pretty bland, to be perfectly honest. There is no vitality. It lacks personality. It just didn't sit well with me as far as the story goes, because I couldn't become invested in these characters. You know, if I'm reading a story, I have to feel something for the characters or for the story. You know, I just read another Greek mythology retelling, and that one, you know, I wasn't reading it for the characters, but at least the story was interesting. In this one, I feel like the pacing is lacking. It takes a while to sort of give the reader an idea of where it wants to take the story. You know, you're kind of left in the dark. You're like, okay, what's the point of this? What is the point of Kahina in this story other than just a love interest for Atalanta? I think it does a disservice to the LGBTQ community because of that, because Kahina doesn't really have a lot of depth to her either. Like I said, all the characters are pretty bland, and I couldn't connect with Kahina. I always hate that automatic love aspect to stories. Kahina's immediate attraction to Atalanta, this girl she doesn't even know, I thought was just done poorly. And then their whole relationship, you know, this animosity she has towards her, and it just, I don't think it was a good representation of an LGBTQ relationship in the story, mainly because, again, these characters lack depth, they lack personality, they lack substance. And I think if you're going to do a story like this, you know, a really strong feministic approach to a Greek mythology tale with LGBTQ representation, you have to do it well. And I don't think it was done well, unfortunately. You know, that was kind of what drew me to this story when I read the blurb. The blurb does hint at this LGBTQ relationship, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. You know, the blurb is just like, if you're a Huntress of Artemis, you can't love anyone. So what happens when you fall in love with another Huntress? You know, I think that was an interesting aspect. It is something that drew me to the story and why I requested an arc of it to begin with. But, you know, I did think about buying this book. I did think about it, and then I was just like, do I really want to buy it? What if I end up not liking it? I'm going to have a book I don't really like on my shelf. You know, I could always donate it, but I didn't want to. You know, money's tight right now, so it's just like a needless expense. So I just read it on my Kindle, and I was not impressed. I still wanted to like this story, but these characters are just so bland, you know? They just have no vitality or personality, and then the pacing of the story, it just drags. Like, honestly, it was boring to me, this story. I feel like it shouldn't have been boring. Then there are a lot of, you know, I will say this, that ending confrontation between Artemis and Apollo, not a fan of Apollo. I thought that was well done. You know, that ending, the climax, that climactic scene between the two of them, I thought it was probably the best part of the novel, because it's where the you finally get to see some semblance of, you know, action in the story. You get to see some excellent pacing right there. the whole dynamic between Artemis and Apollo, those are the two characters that probably have the most personality to the story. These two sibling gods, the twin gods. And I liked their confrontation. I liked their voices. But everyone else, again, they just kind of all blend in together. I mean, it was just very boring to me to follow these two characters, to follow Kahina and Atalanta, because I just couldn't understand Kahina a lot. And there's a lot of backstory to her, you know. It's not like the story lacks backstory, but she just, like I said, I know I keep harping on this, and I apologize, but she has no depth to her. No personality, and that really is what made the story kind of boring. And also the unclear direction of where it's supposed to go. Like, is it about Atalanta and her run? Is it about Artemis and Apollo? What exactly is the story about? Is it about Atalanta and Kahina? You know, you're kind of just left confused as to the direction of the story and the progression of it, and I really feel like that does a disservice to the story, does a disservice to this LGBTQ relationship. It just doesn't even do a service to Greek mythology either. This story seems very much like a first draft. Like the author wrote it, handed it in, and they're like, okay, let's publish it, without even really editing it or discussing anything. They just like went ahead and did it. It feels very much like a first draft story. It definitely needs a lot of work, but you know, to each their own. So this was Outrun the Wind by Elizabeth Tammy. I give it 2.5 stars. I wish I could give it 3 stars, honestly. It wasn't so bad that it deserves 1 star or 2 stars. It had the potential to be good, you know, and that the ending shows that this author has the potential to write something with a lot of character. So that's why it gets the 2.5 stars. You can go ahead and purchase this book on bookshop.org. If you're really hesitant after this review, I definitely recommend checking out the book from your local library, because libraries are a great resource for the community. And I hope you'll support me by liking this podcast and subscribing to it. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and as always, happy reading.